Hey guys, this is a very special interview with Darryl Robert Schoon, and I was going to wait to release this interview until later this week just because of the horrific things that happened at Sandy Hook Elementary on Friday. But as I re-listened to the interview and prepped it, I realized that the positive messages in this video really need to be heard and deserve to be heard because Mr. Schoon's outlook is really a positive one and a spiritual one. And we know the forces that are aligned against us on this planet, but there is an awakening happening. And that is the good news, is the awakening is real, it's happening, and the cartel is losing control. As Darryl would say, this is the twilight of the world's power structures. Buy gold, buy silver, have faith. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, Sean from SGT Report here with a very special guest that we've never had on before, but whose voice is certainly a must-hear for any seekers of truth regarding the true nature of our flawed and doomed monetary system. It's Darryl Robert Schoon, and Darryl has a YouTube channel called Schoon Works, and he's also an author of a book called The Time of the Vulture. Darryl, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Sean.
With so much going on in the world and the Fed hell-bent on absolutely destroying our currency, I thought it would be great to get you on to get your view on things. And I was watching your recent video, your most recent video from your series on YouTube called Dollars and Cents, and the title of that one was somewhat hopeful, and it's called The Collapse and the Better World to Come. And what I liked about that video, Darryl, is you say, and I quote, "Out of this collapse is going to emerge something far different than we've seen in human history." And I think that's a message the audience needs to hear because times certainly feel dire.
They are dire. Sean, we don't pick our moments when we are here on Earth. We don't. And we emerge when we emerge. And we have emerged, we are here at an incredibly extraordinary time. And in that video, I talked about Professor David Hackett Fisher's work on history. And basically, to sum it up quickly, is that human history goes through these stages. And at the end of each stage, there is a crisis. And these crises take place. These are long crises. They take anywhere from 80 to 160 years. And these crises are marked by rising prices, shortages, economic chaos, and often wars and natural disasters. And they come along every 200-300 years. All right, and Professor David Hackett Fisher wrote that we are towards the end of the greatest wave that he has seen in his work. The amplitude of change in this wave is enormous, and it started in 1896. It is about to crest and come down and collapse. But at the end of each wave, the purpose of the wave is like shedding the skin of a snake, and a better era has always come out of the collapse of the previous era. And our sense of the direness of our situation is reflected in the fact that Professor Fisher said this is the biggest paradigm shift, not paradigm, but just shift he has ever seen. You brought up the Fed and what the Fed has just done. I call it QE, et cetera, all right? And, if you just look at what they do, it's hard to understand what they're going to do and why they're doing it. But if you understand who the Fed is, and why they're in the position they're in, it's understandable exactly why they did what they did. We're now, what is it doing? $85 billion a month in purchases of bonds. Okay, this was unthinkable 10 years ago. All right, absolutely unthinkable. And 5 years ago, it became the conditions made this thinkable. But though I know at that time they never would have thought they'd be in this position. All right, we see the Fed as a determinant on the stage, but to understand what the Fed, why it has done it, you have to realize what the Fed is and what its nature is, and why it's doing what it is. Now, it says it's doing it to increase employment. That's a canard. All right, and they would like to increase employment. They would like to get it back on track. But the truth of the matter is, the Fed is the head of central banking. All right, and central banking is a delicate act. Once they substituted, central banks introduced money. All money in the world now comes through a central bank. This has never happened before. Because they yanked gold out of the monetary system in 1971, that meant that any country could print as much money as they wanted.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah, and well, let me jump in because this audience is very well informed about the history of our monetary system and the 1913 establishment of the Federal Reserve System. I just want to get back though to your this paradigm shift, because we all know now that the collapse is coming, and what the Fed did on 12/12/12 is the Fed said we're going to destroy the currency, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's for your own good essentially, and what kills me is that there are some talking heads on CNBC saying that the Fed did the right thing. I don't know who's paying these people, but clearly the Fed is doing something criminal as it relates to the health of our financial system, as it relates to the health of our dollar. And I think they're doing it on purpose. But the point I want to make is that we know the collapse is coming, and you've said you've said, and I quote, "The moment is coming closer and closer. What we are going to experience will be even worse than the Great Depression." Because in the 1930s, the currency was still backed by gold. And today, we have a fiat currency that is being destroyed, end quote. So let's talk about that, and let's paint this picture for folks about how dire our situation is and what essentially can the phoenix rise from the ashes? What is this better thing you see coming?
Okay, a phoenix will rise, but it's not going to come out of the ashes, all right? The thing that Professor Fisher said is that basically these waves happen, these crises happen because their intent is basically from a higher order, and it's to destroy what has been there so a better paradigm can emerge. Now, you cannot see the new paradigm as the old paradigm is collapsing. When the medieval ages were going down, Sean, when the Middle Ages were just in their death throes, when you had the Black Plague sweeping through the place, when you had the prices skyrocketing, you had grain merchants just hoarding their food, trying to squeeze, you had starvation, you had death everywhere. At that moment, at that time, you could not see that the Renaissance was going to come. I mean, Michelangelo, Paul Veronese, Venice, the banking systems of Europe, trade with in its way. You couldn't see it. And you certainly couldn't see it when it was coming down. We are in a like period, except what Professor Fisher said, it's even more dire. It's even more maximal. It's going to come down with a bigger crash, and there's going to be a bigger rise. All right, and where we are on that scale, he wrote the book in 1996. All right, and then he said we're about to crest. And what you see, what he said then, is in every great wave, whether it was the one that separated the medieval and the Renaissance from the Age of Enlightenment, the Age of Enlightenment from the succeeding era. He said in every great wave, they're led by rising prices in food and fuel. All right, and we can see it. And we, and everybody knows that food is going to start skyrocketing next year. And we, we can isolate incidents. We can see, 1999 they let in speculators for the first time into commodity markets of food and oil. For the first time, that just speculative money can bet on future prices of food. They were disallowed from doing that before because the only people who had the business in being in the market were suppliers. All right, and the people who took positions in the market to mitigate the ups and downs. All right, once you let the money boys into the market, then you had volatile swings. You introduced volatility, extraordinary volatility, because that's where they make their profit. All right. Before 1999, that never happened. So we are here. But what Professor Fisher said, this is just an iteration of something that happens throughout history, and this is going to happen again. It's happening right now. Here you are on your surfboard, all right, and you find yourself on a tsunami that you didn't expect, all right? Where we are, Sean, is that just as we're cresting up, I see is that we are basically offshore of a paradise. But the truth of the matter is everybody is still going on their way up, and they're so fixated on where they are on the board and the enormity of the wave and the power that they can't control beneath them. They're going, holy smokes, I'm going to eat it.
Well, Darryl, as you described this crashing wave, we are going into a paradigm shift. I mean, there's just no question about it. It's going to be an end of the dollar as the world's reserve currency paradigm shift. And my question is, for those who do not have any physical silver or gold or any tangible assets outside of this paper system, is it your belief that the paradigm for those folks will be anything less than desperate? Because it's my belief that if you don't protect yourself with tangible assets, you will be a serf potentially for the next decade or century.
Well, the world is going to come a lot quicker than the next century. And Sean, when you are approaching the collapse of a paradigm, all you can see basically is the end of the paradigm. You're going, how are you going to make it to the next? Those are questions that will be answered by the future. All right. I don't say, my belief is, I end my tagline. I have a tagline on the end of every article I've written since 2007. Buy gold, buy silver, have faith. And in my book, I said of these three, faith is the most important. All right? Because it's going to allow you to be flexible enough to respond to the situation in the moment. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to have gold and silver stuffed, and they're going to eat it. They're going to crash it. Now they'll have more than the other people who have nothing. But this is huge. This is not just money. This is not just security. It's huge. All right? Now it's going to be very difficult for those who don't. All right? But like I say, my caveat is three things. It's a three-legged caveat. Buy gold, buy silver, have faith, and I've always said that faith is the most important of the three, and that's a personal deal.
Yeah, you're a spiritual guy, and it occurred to me that when I read your quote, out of this collapse is going to emerge something far different than we've seen in human history, that this is more than just a financial paradigm switchover. I think this is a spiritual realignment. This is a spiritual paradigm shift, and I do see the world waking up. We see the Internet allowing people to communicate at a moment's notice. For the first time, there's this free flow and exchange of information, and the men behind the curtain have been revealed. That can be nothing but good for humanity.
Very good. And you're absolutely right. Bucky Fuller, my friend Marshall knew Bucky very closely. He truly was he had his foot in the other world. All right, that's why he was able to predict what happened here. Bucky said in 1981, Sean, He died that year later. This was his last book, and it was basically his message to what he called fellow Earthians on the planet, on the spaceship Earth. He said, 1981, he called this, the introduction was titled, The Twilight of the World's Power Structures. All right? He said, mankind is entering a period of unprecedented crises. The crisis is universally intended, it's another word for God, all right? Universally intended to transform disintegrated, competitive, different credo, different colored humanity into an interdependent, interharmonious whole which will exist at a level of abundance greater than we can even imagine. If I didn't have that background, I don't think any amount of medication would allow me to wake up in the morning and enjoy the day given what I know.
Yeah, that's very insightful, and I often wonder how atheists make it through the day. And I've got nothing against our atheist friends. It just seems to me that the ultimate humility is to gaze up at the universe, know that there's trillions and trillions of stars and billions of galaxies, and just know that we don't know how it all came about.
That's it.
Far too humble to claim that there is no quote unquote God or creator of this thing, because there does seem to be a grand design And at the end of the day, when we know what we know about the evil that is in control of this planet, all you can do is throw yourself up against a just universe and say, judge those who've done badly, judge those who've made this world an evil place, judge those that would hurt a child, because it's really too much for us to handle if we think too much about it and spend too many days getting depressed over it. All we can do is speak out and fight. I wanted to ask you this. Let's circle back to what the Fed is doing with this essentially QE4 and now these quote-unquote unsterilized bond purchases. I just want to paint the picture for the audience that, whether it's $45 billion a month or $85 billion a month, people are losing sight of how much money that is. Now, a company like 3M, which was founded in 1902, and is a household brand and name in this country, it's an international company, has a market cap of only $63 billion. So what these guys are doing is on a monthly basis, they're printing into existence enough fiat to buy up and sell a company that's been around for more than 100 years. That's how dire the situation is, and I don't think people realize it.
They don't. The numbers are they're mind-boggling. But there's a reason why they're printing so much, Sean. And I want to say that their agenda is different than we see it is. The agenda is not to destroy it, though it is ultimately destructive. It's like the doctors in the emergency room are giving the patient so many steroids. all right, because they need the patient to walk around and look good, all right? They're trying to extend their fiefdom. They're trying to extend this carnal economic system by which the few have profited against the rest of us by indebting the whole world. That's their agenda, and they're trapped into this. They would not want to be there, all right? They have found themselves backed into a corner. They're doing exactly the only thing that they can do in the corner to extend the system. We know from watching it, it's fatal. All right, but these people, they live off the dime of the system. All right, and self-deception is the greatest trap of humanity. It always has been. So I would not be so quick to give these people the sense of reality that we know about the system. They know it, and they're lying. Richard Ku's work on the Japanese deflationary model is extraordinary. My new article is coming out. The title is basically Drowning in a Sea of Liquidity, the End Game, blah, blah, blah. But that's what it is. I'm going to talk about it, that they do know what's going on. And the point of my article is to explain why they're doing what they're doing. All right, they're hoping against hope. The little tagline at the bottom is "playing for time when time has run out." That's where they are, and it's a latched effort. All right, it's like they've thrown it all to the winds, and they're trapped. They're trapped in a trap of their own making. They're blind to the consequences because their commitment is not to make it better. See, that's the thing that we have made a mistake about the Fed, that they're there to maintain the system and make it better. No, they are there to maintain the system so it'll make it better for them. Yeah. All right, and that has blinded them to every other factor that exists. And they work for Bernanke works for the boys.
Right.
We don't know who owns the Fed, but we know that they cherry pick the smartest. The guys who own it, they're no smarter than you and I. They just happen to own it.
Right.
And they're, we're sitting here from our point of view, Sean. We're going, holy smokes, how are we going to survive the tsunami? All right. They're thinking from the same thing. But we've got our little, our families and our small net worth for sale. These folks have got trillions at stake.
Yeah, and one caveat on the we're no smarter, they're no smarter than us. The one thing I'd say about that is that, at the highest levels, a lot of these people seem to be pedophiles and Luciferian devil worshippers.
And the closer you look, the dirtier it gets. You go, this is like a 3D horror movie.
Yeah. No, I'd say that anyone in this audience is far smarter than those folks because we're going to fall on the side of goodness and spirituality.
That's what it is. And thank God we're on that side. It's almost I used to joke with Martha. I said, well, the universe has made sure that we have been tempted to go over the dark side. We don't have access to their trillions. It is a morality play in a universe that I believe ultimately that good and evil is a part of the duality at the moment. It's a morality play. That's why The Hobbit, the Trilogy of the Rings have taken up. They were meant to come in. We are here. This is not. And what I want to say is that because my own beliefs are my own beliefs. All right, but I've seen this coming. I have my own understanding of the context of this means and the spiritual nature of it is. And what I want to say is this: is that hold on to your faith. Let go of what you can't control, and your faith will take you to where you are safe, because we are a part of this great thing, all right? And part of the drama of the world of duality is to be disconnected from what we believe is the source. That disconnection is only conceptual. We have never been disconnected from it, but we think we are. And the power of thought in the world of duality is so powerful that it creates its own reflection. This is a tautological universe. It's interactive. This is huge. When we get through this, Sean, and I think that it's going to happen sooner than most think. All right? When we get through it, it is going to be a change on a level that we can't conceive of. I think these forces that have been here for so long are over. All right? And I say this knowing how powerful they are. I say this knowing how evil they have been. I say this knowing how cold and selfish this world has been. Nothing surprises me here. I know it. I've seen it. And even against that backdrop, I tell you, if I had not had the background I had, I don't think I'd be able to hold what I see in front of me in any type of thing where I can really appreciate life. But I know that life is bigger than them. I know how. One of my sayings, Sean, is this: power is no more control than credit is money. The forces that have so much power, they are not in control, and neither is their credit money. All right? We are seeing this from our own perspective. We have neither the power, and we have limited sources of credit. All right? Those people, those entities on the other side, those forces on the other side, have huge amounts of power, huge amounts of credit, but their power is not control, and their credit is not money.
Yeah, that's very well said, and I think that's why I wanted to get you on, because I could just tell you were a spiritual guy, and I wanted to give people, the good news, because we know what the bad news is, and we hear nothing but bad news, especially in these circles of those of us who are awake that want to warn people about the coming collapse, right? So it just sounds like bad news, bad news. Look, in the few minutes that we have left, I want to ask you about the next 12 to 24 months, or the next 2 days to 24 months. Max Kaiser, a friend of ours, has predicted that we will see the collapse in this country in April, right around tax time. That's his deadline.
Okay.
I talked to some other smart people, and they think we're going to see hyperinflation first hit Japan and possibly in the UK, given the debt ratios in those countries.
Yes.
We all now are talking about hyperinflation in the United States. What do you see? Where does this thing start? Where do the dominoes begin to fall first?
In the last article I put out, I said it could be a black swan, it could be a derivatives collapse, it could be a collapse of a credit event like happened with Credit Anstalt. In the end, it's going to be a collapse of confidence. Okay. Now, about predictions, I can only say this: those who see these dynamics, all right, once you're aware of really how precarious it is, the tendency is to see it coming sooner than it does. Those who are blind to it see it never coming. The truth and what will happen lies between the two. Now, I have a feeling we're imminent, okay? And in the long view, we truly are imminent, but I don't know how long it is. And the closer, it's like Heisenberg's theory of uncertainty. The closer you get to it, the less certain of you where it is. You know it's there, but you can't pinpoint it. And that's the thing with predictions. We have these feelings. Someone's going to be right, Sean. It may be Max, it may be Gerald, it may be Rubina, who knows? It may be your mom, who goes and says, Sean, I got a real bad feeling about
it won't be my
September.
Mom. She didn't even watch any of the videos I make. We all have people like that in our lives that are trapped in the current paradigm, and they do not want to be woken up. And friends and family,
it's too scary.
Usually,
it's too scary.
Yeah, they're right at the top.
It's too scary. I understand. We used to go to parties. I mean, I've felt this way since the mid-'90s, and Martha would say, Darryl, shut up. These people want to have a good time.
Right. Isn't that funny? Let's just leave folks with this. I don't want to beat people up because I know that times are tough, and if you can't buy physical silver and you can't buy physical gold, Lord knows it can be hard when you're trying to put food on the table for family.
Yes.
But where does it rank in your hierarchy of needs at this point, knowing what's coming?
You mean gold and silver?
Yeah, physical form.
Physical gold and silver. It's at the top. It's at the top. The conversion of debt-based paper money, everything's an obligation, all right? That world is based on a foundation of dominoes, all right, of obligations that are not going to be covered, all right? This is going to be a maximal collapse of that, all right? So it isn't what you have, it's what the people have that owe you. People have no idea their pensions are at risk. It's all a dominoes of obligations that cannot be repaid.
Right.
Okay, we have sunk the future. All right. So in terms of assets, in terms of wealth, the conversion to paper to physical is more important than it was 5 years ago when I first wrote my book about it. But the other side is that I absolutely believe that if your heart is pure and you believe, you're going to be taken care of. It's going to be a test of faith.
Yeah.
Well
said. Well said, Darryl. We sure do appreciate your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'd have to believe that the audience has as well. So, guys, if you enjoyed this, thumbs up the video, pass it along to others, and please don't forget to subscribe to Darryl's YouTube channel. It's Schoonworks, SCHOONWORKS. I'll put a link below in the more information section. And, Darryl, why don't you tell people how they can get to your website?
The website is www.Schoon. It's not just for Darryl Robert, and Schoon is SCHOON.com. I made a joke about it that it's all the bad news you could bear, even with medication. But the purpose is only as to balance the quote good news that the cheerleaders of the debt-based, credit-based society are trying to keep you on. I am an optimist. All right, but I'm a realist, and so my optimism, I believe, is going to be justified, and so are my realistic assessments of what's going on now. It's on my websites. I've got 5 books out, and all that information's there. So, Sean, I want to say this, so that this is a second interview I've had this week, and both of you are seeing the light in the darkness. And I want to say that in the previous few years, that was not on the table. And I think it was because people didn't even want to see that there was trouble. And I think we've reached a turn, all right, where, and it's a two-pronged turn. One, it's the inevitability of the collapse is sinking in. And as it's sunk in, there's a counterweight to it. It's like a teeter-totter. It's being, as we're seeing the darkness, we're also seeing a glimmer of light at the same time, as we're accepting the darkness.
Yeah, I think most of us, a lot of us anyway, can feel it, and we certainly hope you're right. Darryl, thanks so much. Let's get together and talk again in the spring, can we?
Okay. Well, you got a date.
Okay, man. Well, thanks so much for your time. I really do appreciate it, and on behalf of the whole audience, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, guys, that'll do it. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really can't thank you enough. I appreciate each and every one of you, your kind words, and your support. Please tune in to sgtreport.com for the very latest in alternative news every day. And check out thelibertymill.com. Real news 24/7. Thanks for watching.